Michael Olise, just wow, wow, wow. Excellent second half performance, helping France to beat Senegal 3-1 in their opening game of the World Cup. I know Mbappe is going to steal the headlines. 2 goals makes history in the World Cup, closer to that World Cup record, even though Lionel Messi then went on to score a hat trick. So listen, crazy, crazy, crazy night. But today's video, we're taking a look at Michael Olise's second half performance, which I felt was, I'm going to be honest, it's still probably the best performance I've seen from a player in this tournament. Yes, I know Lionel Messi scored a hat trick. He is the GOAT. He is the greatest player on the planet. No player is better than him. But if I'm looking at it, as much as I love Lionel Messi, I felt that Michael Olise's performance was absolutely top notch. So let's get into it. So obviously, yesterday or last night against Senegal, obviously France, as I mentioned before, winning the game 3-1. Obviously, it looks like a comprehensive victory, which in the end it was, but it was anything but. It was anything but. I think first half, when we're looking at it on the balance of play, if I'm being totally honest with you, there was a lot of good things from Senegal, in my opinion, in the game. I felt that they were almost controlling France. They were intense, like that intensity that they brought to that first half was absolutely brilliant. They were pressing, they were really, getting up and at it against France. And I'll be honest, France had no answers. They had absolutely no answers. And I felt that they were, I can't even say playing, within themselves, but one of the things, and we'll take a little look at that anyway. One of the things that I noticed, obviously, in the game was that between Ousmane Dembele and Michael Olise, there was a lot of rotations, but it almost felt like it was too many rotations. The team was constantly moving around, constantly, trying to find this space. But then what ended up happening is that players started to get into each other's way, and I think that was happening quite a lot throughout the game. And well, in that first half anyway. And I felt like, Senegal were able to exploit that. They were finding pockets of spaces. They were finding gaps, within, the midfield. There was massive spaces on the pitch. And the problem that you've got with a team like Senegal is that they want to eat those yards up. Players like Sarr, players like Nico Jackson, who want to run into those channels of spaces. Juf from that left back position, bombing forward, Lamine Kamara in the middle of the park. It was just, it just felt like it was, I don't want to say too easy, but it was definitely, it wasn't the game that I felt that Senegal probably thought it was going to be. I felt like the second half was probably what they thought it was going to be. Of course, obviously the quality then, will inevitably tell. But in this first half, what you had at the beginning was, Michael Olise on that right hand side, swapping with Ousmane Dembele, every now and again, and then every now and again he would drop deep, as you can see here with this shot. He's dropping deep, but it's like, okay, are you not the right winger? But then Dembele goes out there. Sometimes Koundé is on there on the right hand side. It was just, for me, it was kind of just all over the gaff, and I just felt that because they were rotating so much within the game, what you then had was, I felt it was probably a little bit of miscommunication, a little bit at times, because Senegal were finding space. You can see Mane here. If it wasn't Mane, it was just, running on that outside. It was Nico Jackson running into the space. And because they were pushing up so high during moments, it was just leaving so much space at times. And as I mentioned before, in my preview, you guys go and watch that. In the preview, I mentioned that France will try to push up high, and they will push up high quite aggressively, especially Upamecano, who I felt was actually pretty decent, in the game. But he will push up high, and once he pushes up high, it's going to leave gaps. It's going to leave gaps, especially because he's so aggressive. So if he doesn't win that ball, or that ball goes in behind, I know he's got the pace and he's got the strength to be able to get back, but it can cause problems. And you can see here with Olise, obviously, pictured here at the bottom of your screen, Olise having to run back, at points, in that first half, he's running back to, the centre back, left back positions, to help with recovery runs. You're the right winger. The hell are you doing at centre back? Do you know what I mean? Like, that is crazy to me. You're in those, kind of positions. So yeah, I just felt like the first half was just complete and utter bit of chaos, to be honest with you, from France. They weren't intense enough. They weren't really getting up and at it. And I'll be honest, man. Senegal probably should have been a goal or two potentially up in the game. They were definitely the better team. As I said before, look at the space that's kind of being left in behind. That back line. Jackson would love that, and he did love that. If Jackson was just a little bit better, who I think, by the way, Jackson was actually pretty decent. In the game, and I think he's actually a decent player. Or there's definitely a player in there. You can kind of see it with him. He seems like one of those players that in a few years' time, I feel like he's going to be an absolute beast, of a player. Once he kind of just refines his finishing and stops going offside, I think he'll be definitely, a really, really good player. But again, as I mentioned before, that space, middle of the park, Rabiot in there, Doué was getting bypassed constantly in that first half. I think we saw, Deschamps was quite angry with Doué, during the game just because of the space that he was leaving. Every time, can't remember who was on the right hand side, but every 2 seconds he was just skipping past him like he was absolutely not there. Doué doesn't even look like he was trying, that much in that first half. And again, I'm looking, Olise, Dembele, Mbappe. It was just kind of nothing's working here, and you're not really doing anything. You're trying to pick up the ball, you're trying to play ball to feet. It's not working. It's really, really not working. And it started to look like this team was a little bit first half from what people were saying. It looked like, no, these guys are really, really overrated. But as we know, with that second half, performance, you can't discount a team, like France, not with the quality, that these guys have. By the end of the game, as you guys can see, obviously, he created uh, four key passes and two big chances, in the game. It was just a ridiculous performance. And listen, rightly so, in my opinion. I felt like he did deserve that man of the match. But again, if we were just basing this purely off of that, first half performance, I don't think, he would have, potentially have gotten that. And, this being the assist, for the goal. I mean, this is brilliant, in itself. But again, the run makes the pass, as they say. Like, if Mbappe doesn't make that run, does he play that pass? I mean, who else would have played that pass? Probably nobody at that moment in time or that period of time, within the game. But at least he's got that quality, he's got that X factor in his game to be able to play that pass through three players. I say through three players, but past three players, in the Senegal kind of midfield and back line. And he's able to get it right into the path of Mbappe. And of course, Mbappe with a brilliant, absolutely brilliant finish. And you can see here with his first half kind of map, right? So you can see here, these are the kind of areas of the pitch that he was obviously picking up the ball in. Again, like I said, he started out the game on that right hand side, and then Dembele was kind of playing behind the striker when France were sitting, when France were defending. You can see they were sitting in. It was almost like a 4-4-2 kind of block. So you had Olise out there on the right, Doué on the left, and then the two central midfielders, which was fine in terms of trying to close down the spaces. And it made sense to me at the time when I first saw the lineup and you saw how the game was kind of starting, because I felt that Dembele, he plays up front for PSG. So really, this is almost quite similar. You're just a little bit further back. The problem is, if you don't come out and help in the midfield, I think that was why, Olise felt that he had to come back into the midfield and just help out, because I didn't feel like Dembele was doing that at all. He was rarely coming back. It was almost like he was staying up there, trying to be as close as possible to, Kylian Mbappe, and then they were playing as almost trying to work as a two, but that wasn't even, working in itself. But then second half, Deschamps changed it. He put him into the middle, behind the striker, behind Kylian Mbappe. Worked like an absolute treat. Then we really started to see the quality. And I'm sorry, I know we talk about number 10s and we talk about what they should be like and the things that they should do and stuff like that. That second half performance, that is what an elite number 10 should look like. For anybody who's asking, for any tapes that we need to watch, if once the season starts, unless obviously someone does better, you know within this tournament. But if you want to see what an elite number 10 does and what they should be doing for your team, this is the performance that you show them. You show them that second half, and you show them exactly all the actions that Elise did. This is exactly what I want to see. It's not just about staying in that number 10 position. You still can roam around, but he comes back and he does obviously help out in the midfield. He's got that defensive kind of work in him. But it's not just that. Like, for me, it's when he's on the ball, it just looks scary. And I know people, I'll take it back to, Florian Wirtz as an example. People talk about flowing verts. He needs runners. He needs this. Now, granted, having those runners, of course, they would help him in certain situations. But when he's on the ball, just don't think he's smart enough. He hasn't got that genius in him. He hasn't got that moment of genius. He hasn't got that kind of boom. I'm just going to do something. And I didn't feel like at no point last season did say a Florian Wirtz as an example. And I use him because he's a number 10. People say, they give a lot of excuses, right? We saw it with Cherky in terms of how he affects the game. But with Olise, the way he did it was he took the game by the scruff of the neck. France were playing poorly. The team wasn't really performing at the levels that we know that they can. He took the game by the scruff of the neck. Give me the ball. I'm going to do so. I don't need you to dribble like Messi past 6 players. We don't need that. What we need you to do is, can you find those passes? Can you play those balls in behind? Can you even dribble just a little bit? To kind of affect the play, bring the team up forward a little bit, just to be able to help. And then cool. If we need the runners here, there, and everywhere, no problem. Cool. I can't fault you if you've not got any runners, not a problem. But what else are you actually doing? Elise was everywhere. He was absolutely everywhere, and it didn't hurt his actual number 10 performance. That's why, for me, it was such a great, kind of second half performance, from Elise, and why I was just kind of in awe, in terms of the level of performance that he was kind of, putting in. And that is, as I mentioned before, like I said, in that first half, I think I swapped because at times it was Due, not Due, sorry, Chouameni, and what's his name, Elise at times. So if I swap these two for the time being, right? So what you ended up starting to have was, it was like they were getting in each other's kind of way. At times, if it wasn't him, let's say I'll put Rabiot, because I did see it with Rabiot more than anything. So at least they would run into the middle here, to kind of help out in whatever kind of situation. If, say, for example, centre back's got the ball here or whatever, obviously Kunde, we pushed up pretty high. Upamecano's pushed up pretty high. Saliba's pushed up high. Let's say the whole of the defense is all the way up here. So the ball might be in this position here, but you got Olise kind of there, obviously trying to close down the play. The ball might go, let's say, out wide here. So Olise then goes, kind of thing. Then Bele's gone there. Rabiot might potentially go. Not always does he go. Then once that ball comes into the middle, it then leaves that kind of space. And then Senegal can obviously just play, from there. But you were just finding situations where these two were just like here. Like they're just in each other's way, and I just didn't really understand. You got Mbappe just kind of there on his own, on an island, on his own, kind of doing whatever it was he was trying to do, which wasn't actually much other than taking baggy first touches and stuff like that. He had an absolutely atrocious half, by his standards. But I just felt that these two were getting so muddled up with rotation, rotation, rotation. It kind of ended up like this. You had no right winger at the times, or at periods of times in the game. Elise will be coming back to help out in the midfield, which again is not a problem if that's what he's been asked to do. But then you had no one here. So Diouf was able to constantly run down that left-hand side. As you can see, look, they're +1, in this kind of area. And then once that kind of happens, you start to create these kind of overloads and these 2v1 situations with a Kunde or whatever. He's obviously now out of the game. Boom. Now it's, Diouf is, bombing down that left-hand side. And there were a few times he was putting that ball, into the box. And I just felt that something needed to change. Like, I didn't even mind so much if you were going to do the rotations, because again, I did kind of, expect that anyway from Deschamps and from Elise and Dembele. If it was going to be anybody to do that, it was going to be those two, right? Not a problem. Just not so much where it was sort of kind of unbalancing, the team in itself. But once you put Elise into these positions, I don't know what it was. It was like, I don't know if it was just because he was going from in to out as opposed to out to in. But once you put him here in these positions, and Dembele also as well, I have to give him credit because he became a lot more disciplined within that second half as well. Again, not as good as obviously as Elise, but just he became disciplined. And I felt that he started to understand what it is I need to do. And we need to, I think Deschamps mentioned it, he needs to get the ball to Elise more. If Elise touches the ball more, it's better. It is better because ultimately, if I'm being honest, in that forward line, he's probably the only one that you want touching the ball in those forward areas because he can release. He's the only one who can play those kind of passes. He's the only one who I feel has that. Listen, Doué, absolutely top player, Dembele, Ballon d'Or winner, and blah blah blah. We all know this, but Elise is the one who's going to affect the game when we need it. When you need someone to take the game by the scruff of the neck, he's going to be able to do that. And the fact that he was able to still kind of help out, and he still had that defensive kind of, would I say, IQ to be able to understand when he should come back and help, when he should, pop in next to Mbappe and stuff like that. But again, when he was drifting out wide, as I said before, with Dembele being a lot more disciplined, it started to help a little bit, because he could then start to find, excuse me, those passes and things like that. So yeah, as I said before, that second half performance for me was brilliant, absolutely brilliant from Michael Olise. Deservedly so, won the Man of the Match award. Put in a top performance, really did help. As I said, Mbappe will take the credits. Will take all the plaudits because he scored the 2 goals. But I'm sorry, without Michael Olise, that game does not get won. And I think Senegal even go on to win the game because they were kind of threatening in that first half. And I felt that the longer this goes on, Senegal will start to grow in more confidence and think, what, we can take these guys. Why not? They're having an off day. We know how great they are as a team, but they're having an off day. So if they're having an off day, we can obviously try and affect play. But listen, as I said before, good win in the end, 3-1 for France. So they move on to their second game. I think, yeah, it looks like, to me anyway, qualification should be assured for them. But I also think it's going to be interesting what Deschamps does for that second game. Does he just start with Elise in the 10? I think he should. Does he maybe play Cherky potentially in that position? Because I do feel that Elise and Cherky can work pretty well as in tandem, behind Kylian Mbappe. I think Cherky is very quick to see a pass and he will just play that pass. So it might be something to think about, for that next game. But we'd have to wait and see. We really will have to wait and see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about that performance, about France's performance, about Michael Olise's performance. Let me know what you guys think. Stay blessed. Keep the same energy. I'll catch you guys soon. Peace.